Hello and welcome everyone to the main event today. I'm Meeta and I'm really pleased to be joined by our special guest and regular guest speaker, Jo Ellen. Hello, Jo Ellen.
Hello. Well, lovely to be here and the perfect conversation to have.
Great to have you back in the room. And whilst everyone's settling in, tell you what, it's a popular one today. So whilst everyone's settling in, please do also take your time to give us feedback on the poll. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what degree of intergenerational communication difficulties exist in your organization, because the next 45 minutes, time well spent to give you some understanding, clarity, and solutions that you can take back and apply into your workplace straight away. So before we dig into the detail, I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping. I can see you're already interacting with the poll. Thank you so much. This is an interactive session. It very much is about what you want to get from it. We've got a fantastic expert in the room with Jo Ellen. I might know a thing or two as well with 30 years and apparently being a Gen Xer who works with baby boomers, Gen Zers, and all the rest. So we're looking forward to digging in. But please give us your thoughts, your questions. I've just typed a hello there. It's that simple. So we'll be keeping an eye on the chat box as well. But Jo Ellen, I've got goosebumps about this conversation because actually I've always said business and success is all about communication, but this really digs into detail, which is important, isn't it?
It goes into a lot because I think the workplace is changing as well. You know, when I started, and I'm definitely a boomer, when I started, there was like a predictable way that people progressed within an organization or within their career, not necessarily within their organization.
It was more linear, wasn't it?
It was very linear, and then you retired. Now, I'm clearly not retired yet.
No.
And I'm 75, and I'm not going to retire in the classic sense. So one of the things that's happening is, I mean, heaven forfend, look at the US president, oldest president, not just the oldest president in America that America's ever had, the oldest Congress. So people aren't retiring in the classic way that they did. And where's the room for people coming up? However, one of the things that's changed radically since I was a girl is that millennials and Gen Zers are now managing Gen X's and boomers. And that's changed a great deal. And the dynamic has changed.
And I wanted to touch on that statistic about Congress and Joe Biden, because actually here in the UK as well, our biggest demographic of workforce is the 40 plus. And obviously everyone's living longer. Retirement isn't done in the same way as you said. And people need to work, but the value of people has shifted. It's not just about longevity in a role. It's about who can handle and utilize tech, who is forward thinking in the AI space. And as much as I would like to think I'm an exception to the rule where I understand some of the way different generations work, I still think that this understanding of each other, we talk a lot about personality styles, but this actually supersedes all of that.
Yes, it does.
Just, we can't relate because we just were brought up in different times, and it's very interesting. But this isn't the first time we're experiencing this challenge, is it?
No, and I have a wonderful quote. Some of you may know this, which is, what is happening to our young people? They disrespect their elders. They disobey their parents. They ignore the law. They riot in the streets, inflamed with wild notions. Does anyone want to have a guess at who wrote that?
Yeah. Any guesses from the chat box? Oh, it's quiet in there.
It's quiet in there. So I will tell you, it's Plato.
Yeah, I would have even gone back to Oscar Wilde, but this is Plato, right, the beginning of civilization as we know it. Plato. So,
but I have a more recent one. This is George Orwell, and I think this is kind of the meat of what we're going to talk about today. Each generation imagines itself to be more intelligent than the one that went before it, and wiser than the one that comes after it.
Yeah. So
it's just very interesting. You know, we live with a lot of stereotypes. So every generation gets their stereotypes. And, the boomers have all the money, they've ruined the planet for everybody, they're not retired, it's and so on, and Gen Zers are spoiled and lazy. I mean, the things that I've heard building up to this session, because I've done a couple of courses on this subject, so I've been building a lot of material, and the stereotypes, they start as generalizations, then they turn into stereotypes, then they turn into assumptions, and then they turn into the truth. And
I think exactly, because it becomes experiential, and then you've not only got thoughts, but you've got facts and learned experiences that unfortunately then make us very rigid in our thinking, which is very damaging in a business, because actually in a business, we want like-minded people with like shared values and behaviors, all on that journey together, all facing in the same direction. So as you said, there's 4 different generations in most organizations now. So that's a lot to navigate.
And it's very interesting that depending on who you meet, it reinforces your stereotype. So I'm a little bit, an in-between stereotype, because I'm definitely a boomer, obviously from age, but every new piece of technology or leap of technology, I grew up with pen and paper and rotary phones and, just the beginning of television, and each leap I've embraced, not willingly, not necessarily with skill, but certainly willingly, right up to the present. And so if you met me, you'd say, yeah, she's pretty cool for, if you met my husband, who I love dearly, he still bemoans the fact that he doesn't have a rotary phone, that he's, he clings on to his old BlackBerry that he was forced to get and won't give it up. And he's very big on in my day. So if you met him, he'd be like the classic boomer. Yeah. And I also just have a very quick one. There was an article, I just love, this is so perfect. There was an article a couple of weeks ago in the New Yorker about a mother who took her tween and teen to a Taylor Swift concert. And it was a very sweet article, and about how they, took forever texting about what they were going to wear and all of this, and the angst of getting the tickets. And there was a letter this week in the New Yorker. I just thought it was so perfect example. So this woman said, there was a nice article about Taylor Swift. Grateful Dead fans, though, showed up for the band's serendipitous set lists and for Jerry Garcia's sleight of hand. Many paid for their $30 tickets by selling grilled cheese sandwiches and tie-dyes in the parking lot. When I was a girl, I rode to Giant Stadium in the back of a Suburban with no seatbelts, wearing cutoff shorts, a T-shirt, and dirty flip-flops. And she goes on and on. What would it be like? I wonder how these Swifties would feel about. And it was just such a classic, what I call self-referencing.
Sure.
Which negates someone's experience. So when you self-reference your experience, when someone is talking about theirs, you demean or you undermine someone's experience. You negate it. And I think that's one of the classic communication problems.
Yeah. Well, I was, we were in the warm-up, we were talking about the impact of the intergenerational communication challenge. And I was saying, actually, it can be as severe as people's careers being ended because of a lack of understanding and a lack of aligned communication between a manager and a junior. Because I know we were saying how millennials and Gen Zers are managing boomers and Gen Xers, but actually there are scenarios where it's the other way around, predominantly in SME organizations. And it's the same thing. It's the lack of awareness. It's the lack of understanding. And you know what? It's most importantly, you spoke about you and Fred and the difference. It's about growth mindset versus closed mindset. And you know what? The other day I was talking to a client about what we're looking for and what they're looking for in a person. And we were discussing how actually, you know what? An open mindset and a growth mindset and a can-do attitude, that's it. You recruit on those 2 requirements, you can teach the rest, because people are willing, they're open to, explain it to me, prove it to me, rather than, no, this is the way it's done and that's how I'm going to do it. So, the first thing we said we would cover was, why are there communication challenges? And I think it starts with who you've got in your organization. And again, you might disagree, but if you have somebody with an open mindset like yourself, like I'd like to think I am, we have to work at that, because often, as you said, our natural driver is to be like, oh, I like the way it is and I want it to stick that way. And when new people come in, they actually have a fresh pair of eyes. They have experience that we don't, because they're coming from the outside in, looking at things from a different perspective. That is powerful and valuable information that maybe we just start by asking and understanding their whys, why you do it that way. Help me understand, what is the benefit? And so, we're going to talk about stereotypes because I think it's very funny and important to sort of define each generation. But just, I've gone straight into a solution. But, I just think that every organization, the poll at the moment is 77% are saying somewhat, that they have challenges. 22% are saying a little. So nobody has a lot and nobody has none. And you know what the challenge of that is that sometimes it's not enough for it to put us on our knees.
Yeah.
But it's enough that we might not notice it, but it's making a big impact.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the things when I think about just the gap, as we call it, the communication gap, is that often we ignore what motivates people. And if we ignore that, then that's the first erosion around the communication, because I will assume that you're motivated by the same things that I am.
Yes.
If we don't understand around the assumptions that we make, and we make them both unconsciously and consciously, and mostly unconsciously, I have a quick little quiz for people. You can either put it in the chat or just think about it. Is that I'm going to give you 3 facts about a real person. They support Manchester United. They watch YouTube every day, and they drive an Audi. Now you will have a picture of this person instantly. Those are 3 disparate facts you have. Anyone want to make a guess about this person?
So which generation they're in?
Yeah, which generation they're in.
It's so interesting because with each fact, your picture develops as well.
It develops. Yeah.
Straight away, when I heard Manchester United, I went for somebody a bit older, because I know that in general, and this is the dangerous word, right? Generalization.
Exactly.
We would be looking at potentially Gen Zers so Katie's just 40s. Vanessa says Gen Xers. Yeah, similar age.
Probably male. Going to give you 3 more facts.
Okay.
Lives in a town, not a city or a country. Is a big WhatsApp user, and is learning to play chess.
Oh, we've got male, we've got millennials. Someone said a boomer. I've got a guess.
Okay, we got 3 more.
Oh, good. Okay.
Let's change everything now. Going to change everything. Grows vegetables, volunteers in the community, and trained as an opera singer.
Vanessa says it's her dad. Somebody middle class. See, so middle class, for example, we talk middle class, I immediately go to baby boomers or Gen Xers. I don't think millennials and Gen Zs think about that kind of thing as much.
It's probably not.
So it's very okay.
Now it's a woman. Okay, Katie. It's moi. It's me.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I love that. And I've learned more about you than I've known in 10 years.
However, this is what's wonderful is we don't need a lot of information to start making assumptions. So someone new comes into your organization. Yes, Carly. Someone new comes into the organization, and you immediately get a couple of facts about them.
Yeah.
And you start making assumptions, and they might be positive assumptions. Most of us don't make positive assumptions, by the way, or we might make mostly negative assumptions. We'll put them in a box, and then it's hard to learn new things about them because those assumptions become the truth.
Put the walls up.
Yeah. So it's I love doing that exercise because obviously I've chosen the facts deliberately to create an assumption.
Yeah. And, you know, I think what's very powerful about this, you spoke about people coming into an organization. It's really key. Two things you covered, which I'd like to expand on a little bit. First is motivations. You know, you talk about, you know, the hierarchical Prince Maslow's hierarchy, the pyramid of why people work and what motivates them. And, you know, it starts with, you know, the basic hygiene factor, then it's salary, then it's, you know, recognition and rewards. And I don't remember all 7 stages. But what I do know is that create a hiring process and strategy for your organization that has shifted in the last 20 years. What you would say about your organization and what you stand for and who you are has had to evolve. So communication actually happens more than the, you know, inter-team comms. It's how you position yourself out to market as well, based on the customers you're trying to attract your employees you're trying to attract. So actually this communication as well. And when we go into the stereotypes, you know, I know for a fact one of my biggest sort of triggers of intergenerational challenge is I'm like, pick up the phone. Don't send an email, pick up the phone. And, you know, it's quicker, you get more from it. But actually, as you said, because of the way we work now, people work from home. Weirdly, when they're working from home, it's like they've got in this protected space. They want to be responded. They want to react less. So even if you're about to pick up the phone, people send a little message on your team to say, "Are you free to chat?" Yeah. And I would just pick up the phone. You just added another layer. So it's about, and actually in the marketing sense of, you know, social media engagement, putting a message out there, people are communicating with you in a passive way that is keeping them in your mind. So I understand that no one size does not fit all. And actually what we need to do is bring it all together and then divide it out and then let people play to their strengths. And I think that is the power of a business.
It's also that pause to say, why am I reacting like this? So I belong to a couple of WhatsApp groups, one of them attached to my volunteer work. I've had to step back and take a breath because I'm trying to figure out who's talking and who's saying what. And we're arranging dates for work and schools. But rather than say this to anybody, I can say it here because you're not part of my group, is that I'm the one who's had to adapt, that everyone is much younger than I am. And I'm adapting to it rather than wish they wouldn't do it this way. And why can't we do this? And why aren't it, you know, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But I've had to do the work. It's me who's had to change rather than me grumbling about them. Yeah. Because that is very comfortable. They somehow can follow all those threads and I have to like read each one. And is this responding to that? But that's fine because they're very comfortable in that communication and I'm becoming more comfortable.
Yeah. And understanding that everyone, and so here's a question. We talk about why miscommunication is there. It's natural. It's learned behaviors. You come into an organization, you not only bring your generational norms, but you also bring your preconceptions from your experience that you've brought to the table. But then companies can think about, we don't want to deprogram people. Is that the right unprogram? Deprogram. But we want to almost have a layering of individuals with the layering of the organization, with the layering of a mentor, yeah, or a buddy. And I'm a big believer in mentoring can go both ways, right? So
absolutely.
And actually, I think that if we're going to, because guess what, us boomers and Xers aren't going anywhere. We hopefully going to live long, healthy lives, and we need to fund them. So there's going to be a lot of us out there. So it's giving each other the space to see the value and pulling together a strategy for communication that brings the best of everything and an understanding. And you can create that environment in an induction. You can create that in your culture and values. You can say, we are an environment of continued learning and improving, like there's no wrongs, there's just right for us and wrong for us because of who we are, what journey we're on and what we stand for.
Yeah.
And then that stops making it personal. But you know what I'd love to do is just talk a little bit about the stereotypes, just to get it out there, because you know, you talked about rotary phones and the start of television. Like, I think your generation has probably seen the biggest change in the working environment than any, right? Because
well, I mean, any that are alive. I mean, if you look at the generations before, I mean, every generation prior to the one before, you know, we had the Industrial Revolution. Well, that was massive for people who had experienced change on a huge scale. So I think it's just very interesting around we aren't unique. And I think that we like to think we are. I mean, obviously, Jo Ellen is unique from you.
I'm the best.
But,
is the best
but yes, you know, it is very interesting that obviously I've experienced more because I'm older, but maybe because I've experienced for a longer time, I'm less shaken by some of the changes that happen. Whereas now I think when you get to your generation and what you're experiencing, it might seem cataclysmic. Whereas for me, it's like, well, I've been through a lot. So by the time I get to whatever is happening currently, it may not have the same impact as a young person going, ooh, you know. So it is just a fascinating thing about, again, going back to assumptions of even just saying, you know, we've experienced the biggest leap. Well, it only, when you're in it, it doesn't feel like it. I don't know how else to explain it. When I'm doing the things that I did when I did the things I did when I was younger, I wasn't thinking, "Ooh, this is huge," or "This is massive," or you're just doing it. You're adapting. You're making it work.
Well, it's small incremental change, like watching grass grow. You don't see it happening, but when you look back, it's there.
Yeah.
And secondly, it's all about perspective, right? So the change on a day-to-day basis isn't, you know, crashing in at us. It's just it's evolving very subtly.
It's also, we have to we have to acknowledge that there is a huge cultural differences too. So much of this filter that we're talking about in the descriptions of the generations is often through Western white eyes.
Yes.
And that doesn't account for cultures in other places that won't experience necessarily the generation gaps that we in the West have identified.
And it's quite interesting, actually, because this communication piece is important generationally, but it's also important from a diverse workforce with different cultural backgrounds and with workforces with disabilities as well. And, you know, a lot of the steps that have been taken for the disabled workforce to be able to engage into the working environment and the allowances that are given for tech and support are so powerful and so impactful, positive. And yet there are Gen Xers and boomers who probably need a bit of support to be, and that's not taking anything away from the diversity aspect, but actually it's about understanding that not knowing isn't a bad thing. Needing to be brought up to that level isn't a negative.
Yeah.
If you're open to growth and learning. So just talking about these stereotypes, you know, and you hear it all the time. Oh, millennials, they never want to pick up the bloody phone. You know, the Gen Zers, they're always on their phones, they're always on their social media, they're updating it. You know, it's like we talk about the Taylor Swift you know, the self-referencing would have been, well, I didn't have a phone, I was taking it in real time. Whereas these people just want to record everything, you know, they're not even looking at the thing, they're looking at their phone. So, and work is a bit like that, because how, you know, if you talk about customer experience, the way Gen Zers and millennials create that customer experience is very different to the way we would have. And I think it's important for companies to sit together in a group and say, right, what customer experience do we want whether it's clients, whether it's internal customers, whether it's future hires, whether it's managers to employees, everyone's providing a service to somebody, right? And agreeing on what that looks like and allowing different elements of generational experience to come into that, I think would be very powerful.
Yes, it's very interesting around how when you get stuck in your beliefs, and whether it's your generation or your culture, whatever it is, you stop being curious. And having those kind of conversations means you're opening things up You're being curious about what motivates people, why this is happening, what else could we do, as opposed to this is how we've always done it.
Yeah.
So we need to continue doing it that way, or we have to throw everything out. No, let's not do that. There's some value here.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's finding a balance. Obviously, we say that a lot, don't we, when we talk about things?
Yeah.
One of the classics, and this is it's so easy to do, and yet we often don't do it, is how do we create the common ground? How do we find the common ground?
Yeah.
So that there is something that links us. So we do often go to the negative. That's how we are as human beings, hardwired to do, is to look out for the mastodon that could eat us. However, so we often notice the differences before we notice the common ground.
Yeah.
And we did this as an exercise at a party recently that I went to, and we were just in tables because that's how it was set up, and we gave ourselves 5 minutes to find 3 things of common ground with each other because they were all different. And it was great fun because we asked open questions. We were curious. We didn't just say, oh, well, I like Italian food. Yes, so do I. It was like, and we found a way to create and find the common ground that opened up conversations for the whole rest of the lunch.
Yeah. And if a company is come along, to this session today, and it's been one of our most popular sessions in a while, so that's very interesting. I think start with a conversation like this, whether you get us externally to come in and hold space for you to do it, or you create a leader within your organization to organize it and create that conversation. You could do a straw poll, you could do a text poll on exactly the same poll we have. Do you think, who do you identify as, and do you think there's a challenge? Straight away, you'll start to build a picture for how much impact this different type of communication is having on the productivity and engagement of your people. And you don't have to spend a penny, actually.
No, exactly.
It's time and it's willing, like we talked about the customer journey, bringing everyone together. Every element of the processes and touch points in your company can be addressed through this style of engagement. And we encourage this anyway, but this is sort of the layer on top of the
yes,
right? So
yes, exactly. Yeah.
And creating some reverse mentor programs and just having people dotted where, they help each other see from both perspectives, I think is super powerful.
Oh, I have someone in my company, in my home team that we have reverse mentoring sessions, and it's, we learn so much from each other. It's quite exciting, really, because she's a millennial and she's got lots to say, and I appreciate every sentence. So it's great.
It's that power of you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so we can't expect it, but we can teach it and learn it. And one of my, again, if we're looking at stereotypes, we look at millennials and Gen Zers as very much tech focused, always WhatsApping, emailing, over talking. And actually you can't get, we talk about communication and the impact of how we communicate. If 58% of our communication, 65% comes from body language, we miss a trick just sending a quick message on WhatsApp. However, if you go the other way and you want to confirm something, or you want to connect with somebody, you want to pick up the phone, you're very unlikely to get time for a proper conversation unless you plan ahead. So in a way, you're slowing down your efficiency by picking up the phone. So there's a time and a place for everything. And I think that's what I'm trying to say, is that actually if we agree on what good looks like and the why of each stage of comms, and therefore what style we adopt, we'll probably bring something from every generation into the mix.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? And I think that challenging our assumptions is huge. And often what we don't do is we don't check them out. I assume this about you, Meeta. Am I right?
Yeah.
I've assumed that you XXXX. Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah.
But also, I think it's good to challenge other people's assumptions that you think they've made about you. So because you can pick it up. You can get a sense that somebody has made an assumption about you.
Yeah.
I think that we often, and because of, I think, the hybrid working, where we're not all in an office in the same way we were before, is that we then create our bubble within our bubble. So we're home, we've got our little bubble, and we might actually communicate with the same people, and we won't necessarily reach out to someone outside our bubble just to say hello, just to check in. And I know I've been guilty of that myself, and
we get into a rhythm, don't we?
Yeah.
That we again, and there's, I suppose, we've also got to look at, yes, this is looking at everything that differentiates us, but as you pointed out, what are our commonalities? What are the ties that bind? What is the thread that runs through us? Thread is like the favorite word of the tech world at the moment.
At the moment.
But and interesting that it goes back to written word rather than videos. And you think about generational differences, the video and the sort of instantaneous communication is seen as future, whereas word is almost seen as a little bit slow and a little bit pedantic. But actually, everything has its place. And I think that collaboration always is the number one, creating the environment for discussion and improvement. What about stereotyping? You spoke about, we quickly make assumptions of people. I spoke a bit about inductions, but when you create a bubble and you work in that bubble, and the flexible working, hybrid working increases the sort of frequency of that, how can an organization overcome not just preconceived stereotyping, but actually experiential stereotyping, if that makes sense? Just constantly like making assumptions about people from your own experience. What would you say? Because I think that is very damaging.
It is damaging. I think that somebody has to make an extra effort. And rather than leaving it to someone else, someone has to be the one to reach out. Someone has to be the one to get people talking together. Someone has to be the catalyst in a way, or more than one person. But if we just maintain the status quo and hope that it will somehow work itself out, we see this on a lot of our assertiveness courses. It's somehow, it'll just work out all by itself on its own. I won't have to do anything. I won't have to be assertive. I'll just let it kind of, find its way. It doesn't. Somebody has to make an effort. Somebody has to be the one to reach out, the one to suggest that there's a difficulty, or that let's preempt some difficulties. Look at our workforce. What is bringing us together? Do we have a strong enough vision and ethos that we buy into? And all the rest kind of will, it might be aggravating and it might be scary or annoying or whatever. But if we have that, again, the common ground, if we have the vision and the purpose together, let's see how we can use that to work out the differences.
Very much, because age diversity is becoming, is there, and it's going to become more and more prevalent in every business. Because I know my kids are now 18 and starting to work, and I know that, we've got everyone at the top end as well, and that's not going to change. That we've actually got the full range of age in organizations, big and small now. And part of the challenge of that is the sense of belonging.
Yes, absolutely.
The elders start to feel being pushed out. The youngsters feel like they're not heard, seen, listened to. And again, it's how does a company foster an environment of belonging? And this actually is work we should be doing anyway, because of the diverse and inclusive promise that we have made to ourselves as an organization and people that we bring into our world. So I don't know, like what's your go-to in terms of how we foster that belonging?
Well, again, it comes down to what is the purpose of your organization? I mean, you may be making widgets, but is it making widgets so that people have better cars or better this or better that? If you can, I know this is a cliche, if you can identify the why, that's the Simon Sinek thing. If you can identify the why, then are people coming to work for you, your organization, because they care about that why? Or are they just having a job? Is it a job? Or is it a career? Is it a career that they want to foster in their organization, your organization? And
their why might be a job, because this is something I've always battled with. And there's a guy on online actually called Gary V, and he is a big he's an ambassador of young people, and saying to young people, you know, you've got to get out from the preconceptions of being a failure through your parents' eyes, and your idea is the right one because it's yours and you own it, and don't apologize. And so, you know, even though I'm the Gen Xer, I still very much feel like he's speaking to me, because we all have that generational responsibility that we take on our shoulders. But what he talks a lot about is how to pull yourself out. So if you're a leader or a manager, you can't expect your employees to treat their work with as much ownership and enjoyment as you.
Correct.
And that's okay.
Correct.
And as an owner of a business, I wanted to be surrounded with other people that thought like owners, but they're not going to.
No,
they will
correct.
take responsibility based on their why. So if it is just a job, why is it just a job? What is important to them? And how can we help foster that within our organization? What does matter to them?
Yeah, and I think that that's absolutely right. I think that number one is, if their motivation is that they, you know, need to pay their rent, then that's good enough. That's good enough. But are we engaging in the right communication? And so not everyone has to have a purpose that's aligned. It's just a great starting place. I think the other thing for people of my generation, your generation, well, any generation, but when we're bringing on younger people, is, I know it's a cliche again, but have an open mind. The number of times I've heard, oh, we tried that, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Oh, we tried. No, that's, so you shut someone down. Be aware of whether you're shutting someone down, or again, going back to the term I used before about curiosity.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. How would you see that working? What else could happen? So rather than just, oh no, that won't work, which I cannot tell you in other organizations how many times I heard that when there was that generation. We worked for a cosmetics company years ago. And we heard it over and over again with these young, eager girls coming and saying, we could try this. Oh, we tried that. Didn't work.
And it comes from a place of insecurity and lack of understanding and openness, right? So it's all negative approaches that stifle growth and curiosity and therefore evolution. And every organization needs to be continually evolving, because or they're going backwards, right? And again, if you want to be an organization that attracts and retains good people, which is my why, you know, helping great people connect with great organizations, and everyone's a winner. It is about understanding that things have to change, you know, and being in an environment where you like not just understand that it's going to be change, but actually celebrate and say, change is here, we are change. Now, how are we going to channel the change so that it's for the greater good rather than unsettling?
I think I've got some notes that I was making, one I prepared earlier, is that sometimes, again, with assumptions, I'm going to assume that you know how I want to be communicated to. But if you have a different style of communication, so let people know, you know, I'd really prefer if you put that in an email to me. Or I prefer if we could find a time for a Zoom, maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow, so that I let you know my preferred communication style. You can let me know your preferred communication style, and we can find a way to make that work. Yeah. And it may not be every single time, but I do experience the fact that people don't share that information, but then they're up here resenting, why didn't they know? Or,
I have that example. Yes. I have that example going on right now in the company, where my financial controller is going through a month and year end with strict deadlines, needs lots of information from me, and throwing Teams, instant messenger, lots and lots of questions. I, on the other hand, am back to back in my calendar. And if at the end of the day, I haven't responded to one, her perception could be she doesn't care about what I'm doing and isn't prioritizing. I, on the other hand, am thinking, oh my God, I haven't got the headspace for this. I don't want to get the wrong answer. I'm going to wait till I've got some time. So I actually said, why don't we set 10 minutes up every day where I'm all yours, and you can even keep emailing it. So that's our action list, or WhatsApping it, but know that I will not look at it until we're in the room in that 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, all that angst that I was feeling, and maybe the frustration she was feeling, has dissipated. And so I love that. And you know what it is? It's about knowing yourself and not being apologetic for you and your responsibilities in the business, but also being open and as you said, being curious. I love that. You know, just no assumptions, be curious. If you just had that as our motto in every business, we would overcome so many negative challenges.
One of the other things, and I was talking to my colleague today, she'd come up to film me doing something, and I was talking about the long game. And sometimes we're so in the moment and so need this, and so that we forget that there is a long-term view of our organizations, ourselves in our organizations, ourselves in our career or our lives. And we get so focused on the here and I think it's great to be in the here and now, but sometimes we make decisions based on a lot of pressure in the here and now rather than what are we doing in the long term? How do we want this organization to look? And what's your contribution to it? And I think that the more we can explain the long term or the bigger picture, and you understand your role in it, then that also helps the communication.
Yeah. And I think that says a lot about succession planning and promoting. And again, as an organization, knowing that one size doesn't fit all. And I look at puzzles. I look at every organization as a puzzle. When we go and hire people in for a company, we take the job description. Actually, that is not the puzzle piece we work on. We build the puzzle, and then usually the shape that's left isn't the shape of the job description. So it's really finessing. And what I would say is part of the challenge, I think, of promotion, and this often happens when people are really good at something, they're promoted into a manager position, but they're good at that. Doesn't make them good managers.
Yeah. No.
Think about what strengths you're looking for, and that might be the youngest or the oldest, right? That might be one from any generation. So, you know, I think even thinking about job shares and thinking about, you know, partnering in managing a team or leading a team, it doesn't have to be one size doesn't fit all. So let's not make a cookie cutter approach to your organization.
Yeah.
Be more flexible, look at different skills, and that reverse mentoring will mean that we're not as polarized. There's still differences, but it's here, not here.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that 100%.
I'm going to try something which I haven't tried before, and hope we might get some engagement. We might have answered all the questions, but I was going to say that John and I are here for 2 or 3 more minutes, and if you have any questions that we haven't answered, please pop them into the chat box. And
we get one from Vanessa.
As if by magic. Okay, so while we're answering Vanessa's, if anyone has a point or a thought that hasn't been addressed, please pop it into the chat box and we can have a look at that. So Vanessa's saying, potentially maybe a different way. Right. When you're promoted into a role and need development to do it, how do you make a case to management to get the support you need? I mean, really management should be offering it, but if they're not, I think, go on, Jo Ellen, you start.
Well, I mean, yes, it is. We could do an entire webinar on this one, Vanessa. My organization does a lot of line management courses, and because it's often, this is so classic, you're promoted into a role because you were good at something and you're not given the training and the development. Yeah. My colleague, Katie, I think that's the same Katie, is here, and she runs a lot of our line management courses. Yeah. So, and is very good at it indeed. And I would say that thank the organization. That's so great that you have the faith in me to put me into this role. I think it would be really beneficial that I get a grounding in some of the common issues that happen around a line management role. And I would appreciate some training and support to be able to do that. So either it can be an actual training course, come to Impact Factory, please, or getting a mentor if you don't have a mentor, and getting some guidance within the organization. But come at it from a really positive place, because it's like, oh, I was promoted to this role and I don't have any support. That can be an off-putting thing. But if it's like, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. I'm so excited about the role. And I'm also quite nervous about it. So, be a bit honest around that. So that would be the simplest way of doing it.
Absolutely. And to add to that, one of the things I've seen when we engage with organizations on promoting and upskilling is I would say, look at my favorite document. which is most underutilized, is a job description. So ask for what the role will look like, really break down, almost score yours, do a self-appraisal, go in with, I would say, hard facts, and say, with whoever's promoting you, or as, if there's a period of time between when you're promoted and when you take the role. If there is a period of time, then you've got some time to upskill. And it could be that it's a mixture, they don't necessarily have to throw out all the budget. It could be some mentoring, it could be some external courses. Some of it could be, God, I look at my kids and I pay all these school fees and then they learn everything off YouTube, So these really expensive schools, and I'm saying, what are you doing? And they say, oh, I'm looking this up on YouTube. And I'm like, Jesus, you've got tutors. But there's so much learning online. And Jo Ellen, amazing organization. I bow down to Impact Factory because of the value and the quality. And the main group, we have a different way of upskilling and advising, much more in the role. But what I would say is, it's how you package it. As Jo Ellen said, you say, I love the neuro-linguistic programming of rather than saying, I need this, but for you to say, in order for the business to have the most effective manager in this role, it would be great if you could support me in upskilling in these areas. And if they understand it, that the what's in it for the business is going to be beneficial to you both,
nice. Good.
They will hopefully be more open than I need this, I need that, I want you to spend money on me. It starts being collaborative, not selfish, and it's never intended selfishly. But this way you overcome whatever headspace or mindset the person receiving the information is in.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So, Jo, we're at the end. We are so not at the end. Maybe we can do a part 2. For now, we're at the end of our session, and thank you so much for your insight, your expertise, and your wisdom. I love both of those quotes. I'm going to put those quotes onto our threads and share the recording. But just to say, we'll also be sending the recording out to you all following this session. And if you want to share that with your business community or people that you think will benefit from it, there could be in other organizations, please feel free. We want to spread the word and share the stories of creating productive, successful, and engaged organizations. It means we're more successful and happy, and that's what it's all about.
Great. Thank you for having me, dear.
Always a pleasure. So that's a wrap for now. The main event will be back next week, and we wish everyone great weeks until then. Bye for now. Thanks, Jo Ellen. Bye.